Fine. Now, I'm delighted to have here on Outsiders today. He was an advisor to George W. Bush, so we're going to be asking him about that. A pro-Trump supporter who's going to explain to us, A, why the unusual support base for Trump, which is not what people automatically suspect, and also why they and Trump supports Israel so much. He's here courtesy of AIJAC, which is the Australian Israel Jewish Affairs Council, and he's been brought out here speaking around Australia. And I'm delighted to welcome two outsiders, Michael Doran. Michael, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so pleased that you could be here. Now, let's get straight into it. Tell us a bit about your background with Bush and as an advisor, what your role was.
So I was originally an academic, and then the phone rang in 2004, and I was invited to work in the Bush White House on the Middle East. I was responsible in the National Security Council for the Middle East through the second term of W. Bush. Then I tried to go back to academia. That didn't work. And now I'm at a think tank. I'm at the Hudson Institute in Washington.
Now, tell us, your support for Trump cost you a lot of friends, apparently. So within the Republican Party, it's split between those who like Trump and those who don't. You lost a lot of friends because you came out early, like this show, by the way, which is why he's here, saying that Trump would be fantastic. You've agreed with us that he's the next Ronald Reagan.
I do, yes, I do. And I did, unfortunately, lose a lot of friends. It was surprising because I came to Washington on the coattails of the neocons. And the neocons are at the forefront of the Never Trump movement.
Why is that?
Yeah, because Trump represents nationalism, and they want a values-based foreign policy. They don't want it to be based simply on national interest. I think that's the easiest thing. Yep. But I learned from this too, though. I think that there's that they really are. They do have a kind of progressive. They're the sort of right wing of the progressive movement. I didn't realize that at the time. It was sort of a political awakening for me.
There is that. I mean, and I think that's why there was so much disenchantment with the Republican Party from their base, because these people, once they got into power, weren't really representing their interests. And these Never Trumpers have got more and more and more wacky as his presidency has gone on. In Australia, a lot of the Never Trumpers within the conservative media have changed their tune because they say, no, actually, he's not a disaster. The economy is going along and he's doing this well and he's doing that well. But in the US, it seems to be the other way. Yeah,
I think that's exactly right. It's easier for you who are a little bit distant from it all to just, you know, I guess Americans are kind of always foreign to you anyway. They're a little bit odd.
Particularly this one.
So it's easy to say, oh, this is just a crazy American thing. But no, the Never Trumpers they haven't let it go. The reason, I think, is that they predicted not just that Trump wasn't going to get elected, but that he was going to be a disaster for the country and for the party. He was supposed to deliver an unprecedented defeat to the Republicans, and so because they thought they were playing with house money. Because they knew he wasn't going to get elected, they presented themselves as very moral, more moral than everyone else, and very insightful. And they also dreamed that they were going to be the ones who were going to rebuild the party after Trump destroyed it. So when it didn't get destroyed, they had to say, oh, I got it wrong, or in order to preserve their view of themselves as great moral.
But for people who are...
They projected the defeat into the future. And if I could just, that's why the Mueller thing is such a big deal, because they pinned all their hopes that Mueller was going to bring him down, and then they were going to be able to rebuild the party.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is that, you know, you've got these people in Washington, the inside the Beltway types, who've got an entire, basically, business model and lifestyle predicated on this idea of never Trumping. But the people who are the just ordinary citizens out there who might not have liked Trump, but now even that this Mueller thing has fallen apart, that there's no proof that he was a Russian agent, that has just been completely debunked. Surely the people out there outside the Beltway are starting to think, you know, really, this is not as the disaster that we thought it was going to be. Are people who are not inside that Beltway class, are they at least starting to come back over to Trump, or not?
I think so. Yeah. You know, if you look at the polling on among Republicans, Trump is supported at unprecedented levels. 90% of Republican women support Trump.
Wow.
So it really is, as you say, it's a disconnect between
And what about
Washington bubble and everybody
minority
else.
groups?
And the media.
The media for sure. Yeah, no, the minority groups he's got a 50% approval rating now among Hispanics. So think about how much you've heard in the media about he's a racist, he wants to build the wall, he hates all Hispanics. 50% of Hispanics are supporting him.
Well,
that's a disaster for the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. And with black Americans who have overwhelmingly supported the Democrats, now we're seeing record low unemployment rates for that group. Do you think there's any hope that more of them will jump on Trump, or is there just too much of a divide there?
I have a lot of hope, and I have a few bets out on that. But so far the polling isn't indicating it to the extent. But my belief is, and you can have me back after the 2020 election. We'll see if I know what I'm talking about. My belief is that he's going to have more support among African Americans than any Republican since Nixon.
Wow.
Now, I just want to pick up briefly on Israel and why Trump's supporters... Now, we've seen a couple of things where Trump has, for example, moved the embassy to Jerusalem, something we should have done here. We half did and then didn't. Recognized the Golan Heights. Now, no president before has dared do any of this stuff. Trump does it. Tell us why, and tell us what his supporters think of it.
Well, Trump has a support base in what my colleague at the Hudson Institute, Walter Russell Mead, calls the Jacksonians. It's a very clearly identifiable segment of American population. The sociological base of it is people like myself from a Scotch-Irish background. Working class Scotch-Irish, that's really his hardcore supporters.
Yep.
They love Israel. They don't like the elite. And the beautiful thing about the moves that Trump's made toward Israel is that it makes the heads of the elite explode.
Now, you said to us the other day that if you met someone in America and asked them one question about Israel, you would know within 2 seconds their entire political outlook.
The Israel question is a litmus test. And when there's a debate going on among Gentile Americans about America, and Israel is at the center of that. So if you like Trump's populism, if you like Fox News, you're pro-Israel. If you don't like Jacksonian America, you're hostile to Israel.
So tell us a bit more about Jackson. So Andrew Jackson was the president in the 1830s, 40s?
29 to 37.
Very good. Thank you.
29 to 37.
Very good. Very good. So tell us what the Jacksonian philosophy or persuasion, as you call it, is, and how it plays out in modern America.
Jacksonians believe in personal freedom. And they believe that the United States government is there to preserve individual freedom. And so if they feel that there's a threat to the Union or to the United States, they want to go out and destroy it. So they can be very aggressive interventionists abroad when they see an existential threat. But when they see no threat, they want to come back home, and their philosophy is you leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Right.
And so there's a duality there. They can be almost isolationist or very interventionist, and that's what we're seeing with Trump. The tendency to kind of pull everyone back home. That's very much a reflection of Jacksonian America's attitudes.
But the threat, for example, from Iran, is that seen as an existential threat to the Jacksonians? Because Obama, of course, cozied up to the Iranians, gave them nuclear weapons, gave them billions of dollars in gold bullion, which he flew over to them. But what do the Jacksonian Americans think of that, and do they support Trump's anti-Iran
They
stance?
totally support him on that. And if you listen to Trump's message during the campaign, it was, I'm going to do more with less. I'm going to do more than Barack Obama with less resources than George W. Bush. The problem with George W. Bush is he went on all these boondoggles to try to democratize the Middle East, transform the world. And so Trump thinks that's a mistake, but he also thinks that cozying up to enemies is a mistake. So he's in the middle there.
That brings me to China, which is, I think here in Australia, we are really becoming very aware of China as a threat. I think one of your colleagues, Michael Pillsbury, has written a lot about that as well, the Hudson Institute. Are these Jacksonians waking up to the China threat of the Chinese Communist Party and their goal, basically, to be the world superpower in the 21st century?
They are, but in America, it hasn't reached the same level of a sense of threat as, say, the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. And that's what we need to watch. If it gets to that point where Jacksonian America thinks that China is a threat to the Republic, then you'll see America back, the America that you got used to during the Cold War.
And would it take some sort of military adventurism by China to trigger that, or do you think it's just simply the trade conflicts is enough to rise that sort of Jacksonian ire?
I think it would probably take a military move, but I'm not really sure. This is all uncharted territory we're in.
Rita?
Now, I wanted to ask about the Israeli elections just around the corner. What do you think is going to happen there? And if Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't prevail, what's that going to do to US-Israeli relations?
I think it's pretty certain that he's gonna win, and barring some kind of unforeseen event, because even though he's been trailing a bit in the head-to-head polls, his bloc has always been ahead, and lately he's been going up in the head-to-head polls. But I think U.S.-Israeli relations will be fine. America is a Zionist country.
Tell us about the deal of the century. So this is Donald Trump's deal. He's setting up a deal, his peace plan, basically. What do you think is? I know you've had a glimpse at it. You've seen bits of it. What do you think's in there?
I actually haven't seen. I wish I could tell you that I was.
I was just trying it on, man.
His team has been. I actually know somebody on the team who has seen it. And I've plied the guy with drinks. And they're being very tight-lipped about it.
What's your suspicion that so this will be coming out after the elections, but it's Jared and Kushner and Donald Trump's plan, a vision for the Middle East. What do you suspect will be in there?
I think it's going to be, I'm guessing here, but I think it'll have a lot of economic elements, trying to build up the Palestinian Authority, reform its institutions, moving it sort of toward an autonomy rather than trying quickly to get to a two-state solution, because they know that the chance of getting a deal between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government is just about nil. Everybody understands that. So the question is, how do you do no harm? How do you get the best result in the absence of such a deal?
I've just got quickly, I've got a lot of interest in the Qataris and what they're up to internationally. Just give us your perspective on that.
So we have this dispute between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. My own view is that we should be much more tilting toward the Saudi side, because we saw the Qataris meddling inside the Saudi politics, and they could potentially destabilize Saudi Arabia, a country of 32 million people, G20. It would be a disaster. But I'm not one of those that bashes the Qataris all the time. I tend to bash my own country because Qatar is tiny, and
but their influence and their money go far.
But if we were a superpower worth our salt, we would never allow them to do this. I mean, it really is superpower malpractice that they're able to do all this meddling that they engage in.
Michael Doran, could talk to you for all day long. I think we're going to rename the program Not Outsiders, Jacksonians. We're going to be the Jacksonian program. We've got a whole new thing. Thank you so much for coming on Outsiders today. Michael Doran, enjoy the rest of your time in Australia.
Thanks, a real pleasure.